we're going to have a conversation about surrender. Surrendering enough to allow the universe to surprise you with a path that you could have never imagined. Meghan was part of the first cohort of Business Alchemist Mentorship back in 2021, and she's one of my favorite testimonials for the program, even though she technically, quote unquote, failed. She didn't build an online coaching business like she had intended because she poured herself into asking one of the core questions I ask my students, which is, what is your soul's purpose? And she wound up making a complete shift into becoming a singer-songwriter. Meghan used to equate purpose with helping others through selfless service, which led her down a career path ranging from self-employed fitness coach to climbing the corporate ladder. She found herself burnt out at every point along the way and losing touch with her own passions. By reorienting to her soul's purpose, she was led down a journey of getting in touch with her artistic spirit through painting and music. Meghan's story is a tale of embracing her creative side, setting boundaries, and learning to manage personal capacity without losing oneself in the pursuit of dreams. She shares wisdom on the importance of taking a personal inventory of where our energy is being invested and how this can lead to a clearer understanding of our lives. Whether you're at a crossroads in your career, looking to rediscover your passions, or seeking to align your energy with your own values, this conversation is just for you. I'm so excited, and I also want to say that I'm so proud to share that Meghan has produced her first album, and you'll get a chance to hear a sneak peek of her first song right here on this episode. So here is a lovely conversation with Meghan. I'm so excited to share her with you, and please stay tuned all the way to the end to listen to her first song. Welcome to the show, Meghan. I am so excited. I honestly feel like your story is one of my favorite BAM success stories because your story is so outrageously different from a lot of the people who graduate from the program. And at the same time, it is perfectly aligned with the program. And so I'm really excited to get into your story, get into where you are right now, and the story, but also just like the bravery it took for you to like say, hey, I came into this program wanting to pursue a coaching career and then deciding, no, this is not the thing for me. And so, yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I think that us working together is a really good example of, like letting go enough, like surrendering enough in life to let the universe surprise you and let it turn out better than you could have planned in your head.
Mm-hmm. So I want to just rewind back to when we first started working together. And I'll be honest that when you applied for Business Alchemist Mentorship, you already had like a pretty big following on Instagram. It seemed like you have your shit together. You're a very responsible, accountable person. And so I had a moment where I was like, what is she going to get out of working with me? And what I think ended up happening is like we really started playing with purpose. We started playing with this concept around Tao is what we call it in the program, sort of my languaging around it. But really this idea of like, what does your soul really want to do while it's here in this iteration of a life? And for me, it has nothing to do with like work. It has nothing to do with career. And I think that we start to like entangle those concepts together in this culture of like our purpose is what we do for work, which is, before we started recording, you were sort of tying it to how you were brought up to think of it as service. So I'd love to hear you sort of start out with this like idea of like maybe the entanglements that you had around what purpose was meant to look like for you. And then we'll sort of like play into where it evolved to.
Yeah. I mean, I think ever since I was like of the age where I was thinking about like realistically what I wanted to do for my career, for money in the world, I've been really like unable to move away from the like this innate desire to make my work be something that I love, make it be something that like really lights me up and like sets me on fire. And so, you know, you and I have talked about this, and I think we're, you know, kind of similar in that I've had so many careers. I've had so many things that I have done for money professionally, that I have chased. You know, I went to school for interior design and architecture, and I lasted like a year out of college. I absolutely hated it. And there was like this burning desire inside of me to, at the time, coach people and like do that through like a fitness and like wellness lens. And so very young, like a year out of college, I quit my job and I started working for myself, which like looking back on it with like my more adult mind now was like an insane thing to do. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but I was so like lit up inside. And at the time, that was so fulfilling for me. And now with my more adult mind, I can look back and I can see that, yes, it was fulfilling for me. I liked helping people. I genuinely did. I loved connecting with people in that way. And it was tying back to this belief that I held that my purpose in the world needed to be of service to other people. I needed to be helping people. I needed to be servicing others and giving of myself in like a very direct, tangible way. And I think that goes back to just like how I was raised. You know, I was brought up in a very like religious Christian household. And so there was always this undertone of like, you know, sacrifice and like a bit of like martyrdom and, you know, like selflessness, giving of yourself. And, you know, unfortunately, that was exactly the thing that burned me out of that career because I gave and gave and gave too much of myself. I didn't know where that line was for me. And so I moved into my next career, which was more focused at the time on like, whoa, I just need to like get myself right. Like I just need to be able to make a decent living, and I need to be able to take care of myself and have time to myself. And so at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to go into corporate. I'm going to do design work again. And so I started working in tech as a user experience designer. I'm still doing that right now as my day job. But about a year and a half into that fire inside came back where I was like, ooh, this isn't enough for me, actually. It's not enough for me to, you know, just clock in and out of a job. I need something that is my own. And so I went back to what I knew. I went back to coaching. This time through a different lens. I started doing somatic coaching with people, which really felt like the other side of the coin of everything that I had been doing with people before. You know, I was really so fascinated by this this idea that your body holds innate wisdom, that like just by getting in tune with your own feelings, your own internal sensations, that you could learn so much about yourself that like your conscious mind didn't even know before, but it was like living inside of you. And that was a big part of my own journey at that time. And I have a habit of, you know, whatever I'm going through personally, I'm like, I want to go out and like do that in the world and like help other people through that same thing. And so I started doing that. I, got back online and, told people like, hey, I'm here, I'm available for this thing. And it was like, I knew it was like right where I was supposed to be at that point in my life, because as soon as I did that, I was rushed with clients. I had so many clients. I didn't even know what to do with it, and while I can say it was the right thing for me at that time, it was still harking back to this old belief that I was living in, that like my purpose needed to be in service of others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I started doing that, kind of on the side of my day job. And then I started thinking, this is, I have to build something of my own, because I am just not fulfilled by helping someone else build their dreams. You know what I mean? I think that's just who I am on the inside. And that's when I sought out your help, because I thought, well, I don't want to get into the same patterns that I was in before when I was running my business. And I thought, I really need some professional guidance here, someone who can kind of set up some boundaries for me and help me kind of like stay inside of that for myself. And so that led me to BAM. And I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm ready for school. I'm ready to build the business. You've built this thing for yourself and you've made it your full-time job, and you seem to have found like balance and peace for yourself in it. And I was like, I'm going to do that thing. And so we met, and I enrolled in your course, and it was great. It was great. And as I started to move through it, as I started to move through my own coaching business, my own practice, as I started to get deeper into somatics, I started to realize this wasn't actually what I wanted. It actually had nothing to do with my body's own desire.
Yeah. And I just want to pause there, because I think that your story is so relatable to so many service-based spiritual entrepreneurs, because we've all grown up in this soup of selflessness is like validated. You are meant to be of service, especially women are sort of expected to be of service. And because you had done so much of the somatic work on your own before BAM, I think that when we got into BAM and I started asking these questions around purpose and alignment and values, like you could check in with your body, and I could see the confusion at first because it just wasn't lining up. And I could see where in your history, in your past, your strategy would have been to override and be like, oh, this is the thing I'm supposed to do. And even if it feels uncomfortable in my body, I'm just going to do that thing. Because on some level, like it was easy because you were getting clients already. Like that would have been the easier path to take, is to just keep doing the online coaching thing and building that out. But I could sense that something wasn't in alignment. And then you started talking about art. I remember it being about painting first. You started talking about art, and your entire energy changed. Your entire, like, your voice changed, your face changed. Like, you felt so lit up in a way that I didn't see when you were talking about coaching. For a brief moment there, you were thinking about putting out an app for corporate. Your face didn't light up then, but as soon as you started talking about painting, I was like, ooh, we can't not follow this path. We've gotta do something with this. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'd love to hear about what your experience of of that, almost that like dissonance of I have to listen to my body. Everything I've learned about somatics says I need to listen to my body. You just talked about like the innate wisdom of your body, all of that. And then having that be the opposite of like what society has told you to do, what your mind was probably telling you what to do. So can you sort of like flesh that part of your story out a little bit there?
Yeah. It was, I mean, I went through probably like a solid year where it, internally I was just kind of like on my knees. I had come to this place with my own growth where like I was it was like I was meeting my body for the first time, and I was finally like she had been screaming at me this whole time, and I had just been like, whatever, no. And finally I was like, okay, wow, I'm here. You have a lot to say about everything that I've been doing, everything I've not been doing, everything I've been pouring my time into. And I had been so used to just overriding, just steamrolling. I'm very good at that. I have
Mm-hmm.
incredibly strong willpower. If I set my mind to something, I can make it happen, but sometimes to my own detriment.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, when I had finally kind of made this mind body connection for myself, like in a really real, tangible way, you're right. I mean, I was going to BAM classes and I was just kind of like glazed over,
Mm-hmm.
like I was kind of like half doing the homework that you were assigning. And I was just, I was sitting there wondering, like, why am I not feeling the way that I think I'm supposed to be feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand. And at the time I had started painting again. I took some painting classes in college, and it was probably the one part of my college experience, although short, that like really I found so much peace in. Like it was the one part of college where I was like, ooh, this feels good. Like I looked forward to painting classes. I loved it so
Mm-hmm.
much. Um, and I I hadn't painted in years, in probably 10 years. I hadn't painted. I hadn't picked up a paintbrush because I was too busy doing other things that didn't like really light me up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, one day I went to the art supply store and I was like, I am gonna paint. I have the time. I want to do it. I'm thinking about it a lot. Why am I not painting? And so I spent a whole summer painting every day for hours. For hours. I would just go into my guest bedroom in my house where I had all my stuff set up, and I would just sit there for hours painting whatever I felt like. And and as I was like getting into that, I was like, maybe I will start a website and start selling my art. And I remember us talking
Yeah.
in session, and you were like, why aren't you putting your art up? And I was always just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I don't know why I'm not doing it. I don't like I didn't have a good answer.
Yeah.
Um and as the year went on, and COVID restrictions started lifting, concerts were starting to become a thing again. And I was so excited because I've always loved live music. I've loved going to concerts. And so I went, I think, a year ago. Yeah, last year was like the year of like concerts for me. I think I went to like, gosh, I don't know, like 8 concerts. All my favorite artists were like back, like playing shows after COVID. And I was like, I'm going to everyone's show. Um, and every single one that I went to, it was like each one lit me up more and more. And eventually I left one that I went to in June of last year. And I remember I had a session with you after that show. I saw my favorite artist, Halsey. Um, And I came back after that show and I was just like, I can't ignore this anymore. Like every show I went to, I was watching these artists on stage and there was just this like a hunger inside where I was like, I want that. Like I want that so badly. And I remember talking to you about it after that weekend. I went to New York and I saw her in concert, and I came back and we were talking about it, and you were like, well, why can't you start to make music? And I was like, well, I think I'm too old to start. And for everyone watching, I was 31 at the time, which yeah. And I looked at you and I didn't have a good answer for you. You were the first one to ever like pose that question back to me and say, well, why not? And I was just like stumped. I was like, I don't know. I don't know why not. And right after that call, I think it was that week, I started writing. I started writing again. And I didn't stop after that. And when I started writing, I wasn't thinking it would go anywhere. I was just writing because I was like, this is my body's telling me I need to explore like songwriting. And I just need to listen to that. And I had no intention of producing anything. I had no intention of making it into a thing, but then I just couldn't stop. Like it like hit something in me that I think had been there like all along. And it was like, I finally woke up to who my body actually is. And my mind had to like kind of come to terms with that.
I love that. Yeah. I think the thing that you're describing too is this thing that I love. I mean, I feel it myself in my own business. I really do feel like I would be doing this even if I won the lottery, because I just love watching people get lit up when they like find that momentum, when they find that resonance where they're like, yeah, this is the thing my body's been asking for this entire time, and like for a lot of us who have like a very finely tuned fight response, I'm going to put myself in that category as well, is like we have the ability to override like so easily. And so like when we're talking about that thing that like we're supposed to do, that we should do, when you're talking about like service being the thing that, you were sort of like ingrained to do, and it feels like you are swimming upstream, like that's a lot of energy and effort into something that your body is resisting, like with every fiber, with every cell of its being,
Yeah.
versus like what you're talking about. Like, I think what we're talking about with you is really just creativity. Because I saw it with the painting, I saw it with you, deciding to pick up a guitar. I remember when you were talking about how your mom's been was a guitar player, and so like you're starting to like reconnect to some of those aspects of her, and like because you have so much, I'm going to say just like energy, I don't know where that comes from. As soon as you like get into that channel and that current where you're like in alignment, like I think back to like that first, because I remember that session that we had where you were like, I think I'm too old to start music, and like from then until now, like it's not been that much time.
Yeah, I think it's been like exactly a year since then. And
Yeah.
I think I have this habit of like, when I find something that I like, that I want to do, I will like fast forward into the biggest version of that thing that my mind can conjure up. And I get really excited about it. And at the same time, I get really overwhelmed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, I want to be doing the thing on the big stage. And like, how am I supposed to get there now? Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like most of these artists, they start when they're in their teens. You know, they have so much time to grow their craft and to build up and I'm supposed to start that now. That felt so overwhelming. And I had to put into practice all the somatic stuff that I
Yeah.
had been teaching
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
And I had to really look at myself and say, okay, girl, you're going to listen to your own advice or, you know, like, what would you say if a client came to you and was telling you this stuff? And I really had to treat myself like my own, like I would treat my own clients.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard. It's so much easier to give other people advice and to help other people, like, to guide them.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to do that with yourself and to hold your own hand
Yeah.
through that. But I'm so proud of myself because I did do that. And in just a year's time, I have written an entire album's worth of music. I have taught myself how to sing. I've taught myself how to play the guitar. I have built up my inner capacity to be able to recognize, you know, when I am at capacity with like pushing this forward and be able to say, okay, all like the negative thoughts that I'm having about myself and about this thing that I love are just me being at capacity right now. Can I take my foot off the brake? Can I find a bit of regulation? How am I going to feel once I'm regulated again? And sure enough, when I'm regulated again, I love it again. And I come back to it easily. I don't have to force myself to come back. I don't have to force myself to push through this because I love it enough that I keep coming back.
Yeah. That's such an important piece. And I just want to highlight something because, you know, this is the first time that like we're like actually like laying your entire story out like all at once, right? And as you're going through the first part of your story, the thing that just kept coming back up is it doesn't matter what the job is. The thing that you need to learn is boundaries around honoring your own energy, around recognizing when you're at capacity, around being okay with taking a rest and coming back into regulation. But the difference here is that when the thing that you're doing is not the thing that you love, it's harder to like recognize that that is an investment that you're making. Because what I'm hearing you say is that boundary needed to be learned, but it was easier to learn it in this situation because you love the singing, you love the music, you love the creative process so much that like it's worth the investment of having a boundary around this precious thing that you are trying to safeguard.
Yeah.
You know, versus like when you were in coaching, when you were like, you know, doing like fitness coaching, like when the passion and the like love isn't quite as alive for you, it's hard to know where that boundary exists because it just seems like you should just push through the thing anyway, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a really, really important distinction to make is like for anyone who's listening, if you have trouble with this, you know, maybe the thing that you're struggling with is not boundaries in the sort of classical sense of like, you have to figure out your boundaries. But maybe the thing is like a little bit deeper than that, just in terms of like, do you actually even want to put boundaries around this thing? Like, is this a thing that you love enough that you want to like put boundaries around it to protect it? And if the answer is no, then there are some harder questions to ask, but like absolutely necessary questions to ask.
Yeah, I would agree with that so hard. I think, my entire adult life, I have been searching for the thing that would feed me as much as I feed it.
Mm.
And I I started to wonder if that was even possible. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like I would when I was younger, when I was like in my earlier 20s, I totally believed in the idea that like if you find the thing that you are aligned with, that you are meant to do, then like it won't feel like work. I believed in that like wholeheartedly. And I was like, I'm going to find that thing. And I think a couple years ago, I started to say to myself, like that inner narrative changed, the belief changed. I was like, I don't know if that thing exists, honestly. Like
Mm.
I could love something as much as I want as soon as there's money attached to it, as soon as like I have to like as soon as I have expectations around it, it's going to turn into work and it's not going to be it's I'm not going to love it in that way anymore.
Yeah.
That was the belief that formed for me. And this past year has actually proven that really wrong for me.
Mm.
Um, which is really cool. It makes me really happy.
Yeah. Look at the smile.
Because I am kind of back in that like more how would I say it? Like youthful kind of perspective of like anything's possible. Like if you
Yeah.
find the thing that you love, like it doesn't have to feel like work. Like
Yeah.
it can feed you as much as you feed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm very excited that for me that is true
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think that part of I'm going to call it like a protector part of yours is actually to dream big. Um, and the reason why I think it's a protector part is because leaning into this joy, so like, oh my gosh, I was just having a conversation with one of my clients the other day and talking about how joy is such a hard, like, emotion for people to access.
Mm.
And so, and there's this fear of it like potentially going away or never getting to the place where you feel joyful. And so like almost like this like grandiose like I have to be, singing on a stage to like 50,000 people or nothing. Like the like binary thinking of like one or the other.
Mm.
Um is a protector part of you that says, do you really want this? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what I've heard you say over this last year is like, this idea is worth pursuing, even if all I do is like make an album and it feels good to me. And, and so to me, it's like there's a love there that is not conditional,
Mm-hmm.
like I have, you have all of my support in however this turns out, obviously. But like, there are 50,000 stories in between the like zero to like playing to a crowd of 50,000 that is totally possible for you. And through this work of like, again, like your story is that like it started with the nervous system, it started with the somatics and being led by your body. It's brought in this nuance, it's brought in this capacity for you to vision something outside of just the binary. Like you get to have a vision of like, oh, I wonder what the story is going to look like. You know what I mean? Um, and so that's something that I've really, I want to use the word admired. Um, but also that word doesn't feel strong enough to me. So like I'm just gonna like put that in as like a placeholder. Because it's something that I've admired about you is like you come up against these challenge points and instead of shutting down or instead of overriding, you like I've seen you in sessions like take like a big pause and a breath and like sort of like lean into that challenge in a way that opens up possibility is how I want to state that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm just really excited for however this turns out, and also just the recognition that like your creativity was fully deserving of nurturing in and of itself, you know.
Yeah. I like, even just a few months ago, like I started producing my first song in, I think, March or April of this year. But back in December, when I was like getting ready and reaching out to producers and stuff, I had this moment of like, am I really gonna do this? Am I really like, because it's a lot of money to like produce a song. It's a lot of work, and I did have this moment of like, am I actually going to do this? And I had this moment of clarity where I realized, kind of like you were saying, if you won the lottery, you would be doing this anyway. I realized that even if I never produced a song, I would still every night be writing. I would still be playing my guitar. I would still be singing. I would still be making my art. And when I got really clear on that, I was just like, well, obviously I'm going to do it, because because the stakes are gone. Yeah. There are actually no stakes. I can, like, no matter what happens, whether I, am super successful in my career, or if, I have 10 people who listen to my music, I'm going to be doing this anyway. And so I might as well shoot my shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I might as well share, and I might as well learn to share with joy and with openness and without so much constriction around it, because I fear like the outcome, like whether or not it's going to be successful or not. I'm already successful because I'm doing what I love.
Yeah. Yeah. When you listen back to this episode, I want you to like listen back to that part you just said, because to me, like, you can replace art, creativity, whatever it is. And it's what we're really talking about is this relationship with unconditional love.
Yeah.
As soon as we take the like results off the table, as soon as we take the like, you have to perform in this particular way. I talk about it in terms of business a lot, in the sense that like we all have a relationship to business, with our businesses. And so like we have this tendency to like put these like external markers to be the thing that we want to hang up as like our badge of success. But as soon as you're able to sink into like a relationship with that business, I don't know, like, since I've started looking at my business in that way, it has performed, in quotation marks, better for me than back when I had all these like expectations on it, Yeah. And what I'm hearing with you is this relationship that you have with creativity is like, you would be loving on creativity anyway, every single night.
Yeah.
And so like that unconditional love is a thing that flows through whatever it is that you're creating, whether it's an offer if you're an online coach, or whether it is a song that you're producing if you are you. And that has such a deeper resonance with people, and that's really what people are responding to. You know what I mean? Like, in the age of like so many things being artificial and templatized, and I'm sure even in the like songwriting and music world, there's like a formula that you could follow that would give you a certain feel to a song, but like you can't replace the human element of something that has been loved unconditionally and nurtured and cared for. And to me, that's really what I think people are resonating with and what people are responding to.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And I just want to highlight, you said something a few minutes ago about like, you know, you would watch me kind of like in sessions, like lean into like the hard thing that was coming up. And, you know, I think for a lot of people who are out there, like building shit on their own, who are like doing their own thing, you know, I think a lot of us are we're used to leaning into challenge. We're so used to it. And kind of like we were talking about before with willpower, you know, we're used to just kind of pushing through in like pushing through the hard thing that's coming up. And for me, it's been about reframing challenge, reframing that willpower for myself, because I think those of us who are building our own thing, we have a ton of willpower. We have to. We just have to. And if we can channel that into less into like the steamrolling and more into like, okay, wow, there's this really hard thing in front of me. And like, I can channel all of that strength that I had to push through and ignore and even detach into like, okay, I'm going to go like headfirst into the challenge of relating to myself right now. That has been like a big shift for me, because to me, it's just a reframe. It's just like a redirection. You know what I mean?
As you were speaking, and I love that we're bringing nuance into this, as you were speaking, I had this like visual come up of like, I don't know if you've ever had a massage where somebody just like finds those knots and just like pushes like on them. And to me, like that doesn't like there's like almost like an immediate sense of like, ooh, that feels good. But then sometimes I'll come out of a massage session and like I'll be in even more pain than when I went in. My favorite way is like when they find a knot and then they like settle in and like lean into it, which allows for that muscle to then like open up in a new sort of like orientation, like you were talking about. You know, that reframe. And like as we're sort of like talking about the difference between pushing through and leaning in, like to me that's what I was feeling in sessions with you, is like you almost have to like stop yourself from like just pushing through. And instead it's this like slower thing, but it's not a withdraw. It's not a disassociation, right? It's still like I'm still pushing into this thing, but I'm feeling it more. You know?
I'm feeling it push back.
Yeah. And you're feeling into like, ooh, does this want to open up? And if there's resistance, then what information is that resistance telling me? You know, and can I learn from that resistance? And to me, like that is the beauty of being in with a session with somebody who is like willing to do that challenging work of being like, oh, this actually relates to something, I don't know, like my mother said to me 15 years ago, or this is actually relating to an old story that I had that I didn't even realize was like just a story that I could change. Or, oh, this is something that my boss told me, you know, last week, and it's bringing this thing up again. And so instead of just like pushing through those things, where you would miss a lot of the nuance and the lessons that could be learned from it, we lean into it and we wait for that story to open up in a different way, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times I think the information that you get back from that when you do listen to it is so much more valuable than the results you might have gotten if you would have just powered through.
100%. 100%. And it also brings in like, just to circle back to what you said at the very beginning of this call of like, it brings in the wisdom of your body. And, you know, so many of our bodies are screaming all the time, you know, because to like live in this modern world, to participate in capitalism, to, you know, do all the things that we are quote unquote supposed to do, like we kind of have to forget about the messages that our body is giving us. Um, but this is where like the medicine of yin comes in, where we now get to like channel all of that energy, because like that's a really beautiful part of you, is like how much energy you have, how much your capacity to do is incredible. But like, can we take that pause, can we take that lean in and channel that in a really intentional way, in a way that, like, I've never heard you complain about being tired of your music. You know, I've never heard you complain about feeling like resentful about your music. I've never heard you complain about, you know, like just feeling energetically drained. And so, like, to me, it's like there's a true regenerative power here.
Yeah.
You know? And to me, that's where I think that aligned action is such an important aspect of this, because it's like when you're not taking aligned action, that is so energetically draining.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've been looking for the thing that feeds me as much as I feed it. And to me, that is what it means to have a sustainable business, kind of like in the broader sense. It's just it's the law of energy, you know. It has to be balanced. Your input and your output have to be balanced. And if the thing that you're pouring all of your time and energy into isn't balancing you the way that you're trying to balance it, then it might not be the thing, right? Like I think a recent thing that I have done for myself this year is take an inventory of all of the things that I give energy to in my life, including relationships, including my day job, and really get very granular and specific about what do I get in return from this? What am I giving to it? And what am I getting in return? What is this thing to me? Because it's kept me very, very kind of, I'm blanking on the word, on a word to use right now. It's kept me very clear, very lucid about my life, just kind of in general. I think, you know, we, especially for people who are, you know, again, building their own thing, we don't always have the option of like jumping 2 feet in. Like sometimes we need a day job to sustain the thing that we're building until it's time, or, you know, whatever. So I think that getting clear on like, hey, maybe this day job isn't the thing that lights me up, but I'm giving my time to it because it's funding the thing that lights me up. It's part of all of this. And can I find joy in that? Can I find joy in the understanding that, like, yes, I'm giving time to this, and I'm very clear on what it's giving back to me. Because I think where sometimes we get lost is, you know, in our heads, maybe we think this thing that we're giving time to is giving something back to us that it's not. And I think when we're not honest about that with ourselves in, you know, whatever the category is, whether it's relationships, whether it's businesses, whether it's a day job, whatever it is you're pouring energy into, when we're not clear and honest with ourselves about what the thing is we're getting back in return, I think that's where we can get unhappy in our lives. And kind of lose track of like, you know, why do I feel so lost right now?
Yeah. I mean, and this can apply to anything. Like, as you were talking, like, I was just brought back to my relationship with my ex-husband. And I remember making a very similar list right before I left, where I started writing down, like, what am I actually getting back from this relationship?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And being confronted with like a black and white list like that means that you might have to make some really hard choices, you
Yeah.
know? Um, I mean, I feel like some of my biggest struggles have been around relationships of like, the same thing that you were talking about with like giving too much, being of service, like to work. Like I've had that with my relationships all my life. And now I am so grateful for my inner circle because like I look around at every single one of the people in my life and I'm like, I am so stoked you're here. There's like not a single energy suck. Whereas I look back in my 20s and in my even in my mid 20s and can name like maybe half, if not more, of those relationships were not balanced, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we can't get I don't know. For me, I didn't feel like it was appropriate to just be like, I'm gonna get mad at the person because it's like that's the agreement that you went into it with. And so of course there's gonna be pushback as you start holding some boundaries differently. But, you know, um, that doesn't mean that your energetic boundaries aren't worth holding. Like it is so, so important thinking of this concept around like your energy is precious
Mm.
and it is sacred and it is worth protecting. And you get to make choices around where you pour your energy into, whether it's relationships or your job. Um, and I also love that you highlighted this nuance because I think that there's a lot of folks out there who are like, if I'm not doing my dream job, then I'm somehow like failing,
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? Your day job can also be the runway that helps fund these things that you're incredibly passionate about. And for some people, that runway is really short. Some people, that runway is really long. Some people, never fully get off the runway, but then they're still able to find like their passion and their joys in their life. And like all of them are valid and okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I just want to like move us away from this like thinking that like, oh, if you have um, a day job and you're doing the passion on the side, like that's somehow not okay. Like that's a beautiful story.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And, I think when I was considering doing like building out my coaching business, I was really, really struggling with that kind of balance because this fire inside of me was saying like, it's all or nothing. We have to do the thing. And this more fearful, but kind of, I would say a little bit wise part
Mm-hmm.
of me, the part of me who had learned from my previous business
Yeah.
was saying, whoa, 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 this job is giving us stability. This job is giving
Mm-hmm.
me time. This job is giving me benefits. This job is giving me all of these things that are making me feel really safe right
Yeah.
now. And I don't know if I necessarily want to give those things up.
Yeah.
Like, what if I could just stay with like one foot in both worlds? And I kind of reached a place at that time where I was like, okay, but that could be kind of cool. Like
Mm-hmm.
I get to like have all the fun of like making my own thing and all of the safety of like my job that my job
Mm-hmm.
provides for me. And like that can be a beautiful thing. And I think that I think for anyone who is struggling with that kind of like those inner voices like pulling in
Yeah.
both directions, I think it's just about like continuously feeling into what feels safe, what feels doable for
Mm-hmm.
you in that moment. It doesn't have to anytime like anytime I notice I'm pulled into like all or nothing binary thinking, I've learned to recognize that like, ooh, this is just a sign that I'm feeling a bit activated right now.
Yeah.
And maybe we don't need to have a solution to this right now. Maybe I just need to regulate a little bit, and come back to it. And I think as long as you're in touch with those two voices and like what each of them are wanting, it can be an ongoing conversation. It doesn't need to be something that's figured out right in this minute, you know?
Yeah. We've been talking about your creative process. We've been talking about your music for a long time now. Can you share like what themes you like to write about and sing about? What kind of like give us like the 3D landscape of like what your music is.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, part of what I love so much, and I think what keeps me coming back, is because I have allowed my songs to be a platform for the darker parts of myself that don't have another place to be like let out of the cage, if you know what I mean. Like my music is kind of like a playground for them to like run around, like anything goes, you know what I mean? I think as someone who has been in a facilitator role for as long as I have been, I have really gotten into this habit of like needing to put a positive spin on everything, like needing to ground in like the reality of like, and everything is in flow with the universe. And like, that is great. And I do actually believe in all of that stuff. And there are all of these like kind of darker, less positive parts of myself that are like, okay, but this, like, we have stuff to say about this. Like, this isn't like what we want to say. This isn't our story. And so I tend to really play in, you know, the minor keys. I explore a lot. I identify as neurodivergent, just kind of like broadly as a category. And so I explore those themes a lot in my music, you know, these inner narratives of like always being too much, too messy, too indecisive, and kind of like the chaos, the inner chaos that comes from living in a world that doesn't understand neurodiversity, that kind of pathologizes it, that kind of says that like this is different and so it's wrong. And I also explore a lot, like I said in the beginning, I grew up in a very kind of conservative religious household. And I no longer identify with those belief systems. And so my music has a lot of themes around religion that are kind of like a bit tongue in cheek, kind of like pulling at those themes a bit. Yeah.
I don't know. What I'm hearing is that it's been like an active part of your alchemization process. You know, like actually giving fear a place to like fully express herself, like actually giving, you know, anger at some of the systems that you've grown up in a place to like fully share how she feels. Like it's such a healthy, like incredibly healthy. Like I don't, you know me, like I don't do the love and light sort of thing. And so like I love almost that like the way that you're talking about it is if all of your internal family systems parts got a chance to like say their piece, you know, this is what they would be saying. I love that.
Yeah. My music, I think first and foremost for me is a place for me to rebel a bit. And that feels really good. And it feels exhilarating. It feels,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it makes me feel alive.
Mm-hmm.
And this first song that I'm releasing, coming out on July 28th, it's called Let Me Go. And it's one of the first songs that I wrote. And when I wrote it, I had no intentions of producing it or putting it out. And so that's part of what makes it really special for me, because it's truly a reflection of just like, I didn't think anyone was ever going to see it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about how I show up in romantic relationships. And I realize that I tend to have this really very like push pull. If we want to put it in like psychology terms, like I'm very disorganized attachment. I'm aware of it. It's something I work on. But you know, in this song, I was really tapping into that part of me that really just wants to create chaos in relationships. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and she likes it.
Mm-hmm.
She likes it. It gives her this feeling of power in the relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
again, as a coach, as a facilitator, we know that like, okay, we have to see like, how is this actually impacting our lives? And like, this isn't a trait that we want to encourage. We want to unpack it. We want to like implement new patterns so that we can live a better life. But in the song, I don't have to worry about
Mm-hmm.
doing
Mm-hmm.
all of that. I can just see, okay, what does she have to say for herself? Like she likes holding the power. She likes holding all the cards. She likes inflicting a bit of pain, a bit of chaos. She likes it. She revels in it. And when I was done writing this, I was kind of like thinking about, in a lot of cultures in like ancient mythology, we have these like goddess archetypes who are, these goddesses of like chaos and destruction. And they are also goddesses of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this alchemizing piece where it's like, okay, this part of me that seeks to create destruction, that seeks to create chaos, she's also the part of me that is fueling this beautiful creation in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting in touch with those like darker parts of me has been so fun and so interesting, because I've been able to see like very clearly how they are also fueling my creativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, it's such a beautiful, like, the way that you're describing your story also feels a lot like the story that we've shared on this podcast, which is like you had to go into a state of like chaos and destruction of your like past selves, your fitness coach self, your somatic coaching self, in order for this new creation to come forth, and I think of the concept around destruction for the sake of creation, and we don't allow for those patterns, those sort of cycles to show up, the same way that maybe our ancestors were more in touch with that kind of energy. And to sort of speak to the the coaching piece around like, yes, we want to examine how this is affecting your life and all that, but also I would say that part of the reason why it's affecting, let's just say, someone's life, is because oftentimes these shadow sides are not given enough ample space to like fully express themselves.
Mm.
And so like oftentimes in a lot of my coaching sessions, we're able to identify, oh, there's like a 7-year-old girl who's like fucking pissed that she didn't get the attention that she felt like she deserved, or like felt like she was cast off to the side. And so it's like, let's give that 7-year-old girl like a chance to speak. And some of the shit that people tell me is like so messy, so chaotic, like does not follow a thread, and it needed to be said for us to be able to see the alchemization through, you know? And so I feel like that's what you're speaking to, is like our shadows need to have a voice and need to be seen in the fullness of whatever emotion that they're feeling. And, you know, I love that you've done that for yourself, but like beyond that, I'm really excited that folks get to listen to your music and maybe have a space for their own shadows to come alive and for their own shadows to speak. And that is like, I mean, we can say that it's a service, but like it's this regenerative service where, you know, you felt alive putting this art into the world, and now people get to experience it in a way that might help them alchemize whatever it is that they're meant to alchemize, you know?
Absolutely. You know, I think through this whole journey, the past year, I have gotten to this place where I have reframed the idea of service in my brain, where I have realized that when you follow your truth, when you find that alignment inside and you live that out in the world, that is inherently of service of for the collective. You know, when you are well, when you are aligned in yourself, the collective is well. And it doesn't have to be this like extremely direct, you know, like I always thought that I needed to like be like physically, tangibly helping people to feel fulfilled, to feel like I had purpose, to feel like I had meaning in the world. And I'm realizing that just being in alignment with myself has meaning and has purpose and is like indirectly of service to other people, you know?
Love it. Love it. I think I saw on your Instagram stories the other day that you recorded a music video for this song and you were smashing plates on the ground. Like, I'm so excited to see this archetype come alive.
Yeah. I'm very stoked about the music video. Again, it was not something that I was planning on making, but I have a really great friend. His name is Tristan Guarini. He's a photographer in Los Angeles, and you know, he messaged me a few weeks ago, and he was like, you know, I'd really love to like get into video stuff. You know, I'd love to do some like video content if you ever want to do that with me. And I was like, do you want to make a music video? and we threw together a concept in like 2 weeks, and we were like, okay, I guess we're filming. Like, neither of us have ever made a music video, and we like did the damn thing this weekend. So I'm so excited to see how it turns out. He's incredibly talented. I have the utmost faith in him. I'm sure it's going to turn out beautiful. So yeah, that'll be another extra piece with this release that's going to be really special and exciting.
Yeah. I feel like there's like almost like there's like archetype play as like a theme that's moving through at least this song that you just described. And I'm really excited to hear the rest of the album as well. And by the time this episode comes out, your album, is it the album or just the one song that's coming out on the 28th?
Just the one single on the 28th. Okay. And I have a few more singles in the pipeline for later this year, kind of like in the following months. I plan to release my first EP that will contain 5 songs in November of this year. And then early next year, we're going to start rolling out some promotional singles for the album. Hopefully the album will be done spring of 2024.
Okay, now that you've had a chance to hear from Meghan about what this song represents, what it means, how it has helped her embrace her shadows Here is a clip for you to listen to.
Baby, can you hear the rain? I think you like the pain. Baby, can you hear the rain? I hear you like I'm insane, 'cause I'm ripping a tide that rises in the wind in my bones. I've got a knack for distraction. I'm alone by choice, the tremor in your voice, and then the odds when you're caught up in my essence. I'm a fire when the lightning strikes, the gut punch when I say goodbye. You know you've gotta let me go.
Go and listen to the single. It's out right now by the time you're listening to this. And also go check out all the ways that you can connect with Meghan. Want to share all the places that you exist in the online world?
Yeah. So I'm very active on Instagram. My stage name is Arrow, ARO. It's my last name. So that's where you can find me if you're Googling Arrow. My Instagram handle is I am Arrow Music, with periods in between all of the words, and as well as TikTok. My website is arrowmusicofficial.com, where you can read a little bit more about me, my bio, and links to my Spotify and my socials.
Yay! I'll put all those links down below in the show notes so it's easy for folks to find. But it's always fun when I get to like sit with a client and just like map out what the journey has been. And I don't know. I feel like maybe another business coach might think of this as being, quote unquote, failed sort of experiment. But to me, I am just loving this, because the joy that I get when somebody finds the thing that they're like in alignment with and like find their purpose and find their Tao is like just beyond this world. And to me, like the external thing, it kind of doesn't matter. Like if you could find this joy building an online coaching business, if you can find this joy, some of my clients have gone through working with me and have decided to go back to school. If you can find this joy, actually, I've had some clients who have quit their jobs and decided to stay at home and raise their kids full time because that's the thing that lights them up. Like the external stuff doesn't matter. Like it's really about what sets your soul on fire. And I've been so lucky to like watch you nurture this little spark and just watch it start to roar. It's exciting.
Thank you for saying that. And I just want to say, Kat, that I had no idea at the time, but you were the perfect coach for me to help me move into this new chapter of my life. And I'm so grateful.
Oh,
getting a little teary.
You're making me start to cry too.
Yeah, I'm really grateful.
Well, I'm so grateful I get to know you and get to be a part of this journey. And oh my God, I'm so excited to hear this single. Like, it's going to be so exciting.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything.